7. Or 50% of you guys. That's... I don't know. It was education. It seemed like there was more than 7, I'll tell you that. Maybe they'll watch it on YouTube, yeah. I doubt it, but... Yeah. Yeah. Are we ready to go? Let me know when I'm starting. Are we ready to go? Yeah. Well, welcome, all 7 of you, to our session that's titled Learn About Science Graduate Programs at a research-intensive and comprehensive university. My name's Dr. Craig Coburn. Please don't call me Dr. Coburn. I usually just keep walking. My name's Craig. That's fine. You can call me that. We're at that level now. That's good. I happen to be the PhD program chair currently for the School of Graduate Studies. I'm also a faculty member, obviously, here, and I run a research program in the sciences. And I also have chaired the MSc program. I did that one for 2 terms. So if you've got questions related to either a Master of Science or a PhD, I'm sort of your go-to guy. So I've got bits and pieces of that everywhere. I can't get away from it. It keeps coming back. Okay, so thinking about graduate school, that's why you're here. Well, it's a big decision, okay? This is not, making the decision to come to an undergraduate program is a reasonable one, we think, but making a decision to go to a graduate program is a little bit of a bigger leap, all right? So it's a very big decision. We're going to cover all aspects of that today, regardless of whether you're in a master's program now and are thinking about advancing onto a PhD, or in a bachelor's program now and thinking about advancing into a master's. So we'll cover both. Now, it's a very different model, again, from undergraduate education. So we don't have the same sort of course-based, select from a list, check the right boxes, and we're going to give you a degree. That's definitely not what happens. It's the primary change that I notice with students as they merge through the program is they go out of a highly controlled environment, right? Your day is set, your courses, you have to get to your labs, you've got this and this and this to do, and you go into a reasonably unconstrained scenario, which is that of a research degree. Right, so you're going to exit, you're going to have a few courses, right? Things that you often are going to be centrally focused on you and the things that you want to brush up on, or specific skills that are going towards advancing your specific career. Right? There may be a general course or two within the department that you're applying to that you have to take. We oftentimes have a sort of research seminar that we run with our graduate students where all the graduate students get together and read papers related to the discipline as a whole. That's not uncommon at any university, but at the University of Lethbridge specifically. But in general, then you're going to get on with the business of getting your first research degree at a master's level, your second one at PhD. Okay, so it is focused on independent research. That's the objective, which means you have to come with something to offer. Right? So you're there to pursue your own interests. And that's kind of the hard part. Not that you're not interested in your undergraduate degree, but the onus is more centrally focused on the student at a master's level and certainly more at a PhD to be motivating in order to come up with their own research ideas and the sorts of things that they're going to do. Okay, so what kind of programs do we have? Well, all science departments, I'm here to talk about science programs, so if you're looking for a social science program or a humanities program, you're in the wrong session. But all science departments in the Faculty of Arts and Science have graduate programs, every single one of them. So we offer both Master of Science and PhD options. Again, I could talk about either one of those for all programs. This is good for us. All are independent, research-intensive, thesis-based degrees. Right? So there are course-based master's programs here at the University of Lethbridge, just not in the area that I'm talking about today. All right, so these are all going to have the same flavor. So it doesn't much matter if you are wanting to pursue neuroscience or geography or chemistry or physics. It's all the same style of degree. You're going to be going through a number of milestones along the way. We can talk about those as we kind of move along. And all of your cohort that are in an MSc or PhD program have the same milestones. So there's not much by way of differences. Okay, so what are the program requirements? First, there are some academic qualifications that get you in the door, right? So you need to have a BSc, we hope, in a related field. So note, it doesn't have to be exactly the same field, but a related field, something that's close. You know, if you've got I mean, say a BSc in geography, we probably won't admit you into an MSc in physics. You may not have the right background in order to succeed at the graduate level in that particular program. The GPA requirement to get in is 3.0 on 4. That's the minimum threshold for entry. Right? We're not going to consider those that are below that, but do understand that if you're above that, that's fine. And that's counted on your last 20 courses. So if you had a rough start, right, and lots of students do, right, they come out of high school and sometimes they have a little bit of a rough time getting their academic feet wet, and they find their way, and then they excel near the end of their degree. We don't hold the first 2 years against you, essentially. So we want to see that on the last 20 courses. That's where your GPA is calculated. English language proficiency, if English is not your first language, or if you're not getting an undergraduate degree from an institution that instructs in English, so this is primarily for our YouTube people, then there is an English language proficiency. So you need to have, these are the limits here, a 580 on the paper-based TOEFL, and they have to be within the last 24 months, a 93 on the internet-based TOEFL, right? An IELTS with a minimum of 6.5 with no band below 5.5. If this is gibberish to you, that's fine, but if you've had to take one of these tests, these numbers have meaning. And then this PTE with a minimum of 63, or a CAL with a minimum of 70. So if you've met the minimum thresholds, then we can have you enter the program. If you're just about there, right? So we have a program at the University of Lethbridge that addresses students who fall just below these EAP thresholds. So we can extend at that point a conditional offer, and of course the condition is that you would pass the EAP program, and then you would be admitted into the graduate program. While you're in the EAP program, it's an extensive program, and you would not be technically in a master's program, but it would allow you to apply for a visa and gain entry. Okay, so we've got that covered. Successful completion of the program at an advanced level, there are two different levels within the program, will allow the students to begin, of course, their graduate program the following semester. So that covers off that component. So the first step is applying, and it's non-trivial. Right? I've heard many people say that the hardest part about a master's program is getting in, getting the application done, getting all these other bits and pieces in order. It's an extensive process. We're a little unusual as a university as we have 3 admission deadlines per year. So within a calendar year, we have 3 admission periods, which is good. A lot of other universities just have 1. So we have one application deadline, that's today. So I expect maybe there's not a lot of people in the room because they're scrambling trying to get the last bit of polish put on their application. We also have February 1st and May 1st, and those dates, of course, are going to coincide with entry points, right, into any master's program that you want. Most MSc programs are going to begin in the following terms. So we have spring term, right, which is going to cover from January to April. I always find this amusing. We never admit we have winter in any of the programs here at the University of Lethbridge. Summer, right, so you've got May to August is the summer, and then fall is going to be September to December. Those are the 3 terms that we have. Okay, so within those periods, you're going to be applying. So the October 1st, of course, would be, if you applied October 1st, you could get in spring. If you apply February 1st, you could get in summer. If you apply in May 1st, you can get in. You can start your program in the fall. Right now, you can also apply now, right, at October 1st, for a fall entry of the next year. Right, so you sort of decide which way you want that to go. My rule is that it's really good if you can get your application in and started for entry. This is the desirable one, is the semester that starts now. Right, so if you want to apply as soon as you can to get into that program. There's funding attributed to it, so the earlier you're in the pool, the better your funding options there usually are. Okay, so start early. Actually, I heard somebody just say that in the hallway, that they were just finishing up their application and that they needed to get going. I'm like, yeah, you have to start early, like weeks to months in advance is fine. There's a lot of items to organize and coordinate, and incomplete applications are not considered. So if you're really, really close today, when it cuts off, we simply won't look at it, and your application fee is non-refundable. Right, so you could get all the way through to the end and have one thing missing, and it's an incomplete application. We want to make sure that you're getting these things in before the deadline. Do not treat the deadline as a due date. Treat the deadline as a deadline. Right? Everything needs to be in advance of today. We don't always see that, but we'd like it if that was the start of the process. Most applicants, of course, are applying prior to completing their BScs. Usually this is done in your final semester, right? So your professors have probably had a chat with you at some point in time about pursuing further graduate education. It's good. Don't wait. You don't have to wait until your BSc is done. As long as you're in your last semester or you're fairly close, then you'll get in. If you get accepted without your bachelor degree complete, then of course you're going to be granted a conditional admission at that time. So imagine you put in today. Today's October 1st. So you've put in for the October 1st deadline. You get an admission a month from now. Your degree is not done until December. You wouldn't even convocate it until later. We would just say, look, as long as that's happened, the condition for you starting January 1 is that you've completed your bachelor's degree. Right? We're just trying to make sure that all the bases are covered. You'll get that done. Next, find a supervisor. At the University of Lethbridge, we don't do a general admission. We do an admission based on the fact that you have to have somebody who's willing to work with you. So that's important. So normally the way this works is the student approaches a faculty member. So this is somebody that you've probably had courses with. You're interested in the sorts of things that they're interested, I hope. And you inquire if they're willing to serve as a supervisor, if they've got space available, if there's funding options. You just begin the conversation. Sometimes it happens the other way around, where the faculty member approaches the student. Either way works. I've done both. That's fine. At that point, it's really handy for me. I put this one in for myself. If you provide the professor with a version of your unofficial transcripts. So we'd like to see how that works. So you might be brilliant in our classes and brilliant in all classes. We just like to see the lay of the land. It's a good idea. It's a good opening show to do that. And then please meet with us. Right? We're not ogres. We don't mind meeting with students. We enjoy this process. Discuss your mutual interests. I need to know from my students what drives you. So what are you interested in? This is an independent research degree. Right? It's not dependent upon me. It's dependent upon you. So if you come in and say, well, I'm just generally interested, I'm in geography and I do remote sensing. I'm just generally interested in remote sensing. Well, which aspects of remote sensing? I'll start probing. And then if you say, well, I'm really interested in this area. Oh, okay, well, I don't do anything in that area, so I'm going to suggest that you go and talk to another professor, somebody down the hall. Oh, I've never had a class with them. Oh, that's fine. Then you just go and talk to them. It's okay. Right? This is not the time to be shy. This is the time to be somewhat assertive about your future. Okay, so let's imagine we've got past that step. We've found a willing potential supervisor. Then you're going to fill out the application. It's not an onerous application. It's online. Even if you're just considering it, I would encourage you to go onto the online system and have a look around. It's pretty straightforward. There's the link, right? So you can have a look. It's just ULETH, Graduate Studies, and then apply. There's a big button. Just click on the button and in you go. In order to complete the applications, you will need unofficial transcripts. You don't need to get the official ones until the process gets rolling. You're going to need contact information for 3 references. You don't need to have the references in advance. You just simply need to have talked to them, please do, and say, are you willing to serve as my reference? Send them an email or just knock on their door, and they'll say, yeah, sure, that's fine. And then, okay, get their contact information. You'll put that in the admit system, and then they will be contacted by the School of Graduate Studies in order to fill out their part of your application. Right? Then we'd like you to create a curriculum vitae. It's a bit different than a resume. It's everything you've done. It's an important document. And then finally, the letter of intent. I'll go over each one of these things in turn so that we're okay knowing what we're doing. So the unofficial transcripts, again, one more time, minimum admission requirement is a 3.0 on a 4 scale. So you're in that last semester and you're just below that. Work as hard as you can. Try to get that number up to where it needs to be. It makes the process easier. Okay, so make sure you've got the grades you needed to apply. Why do we worry about that? Well, funding decisions are partially based on a GPA threshold. All right, so if you've got a GPA of 3.0, you can qualify to have a graduate assistantship, for example. And that would provide a base level of funding that would allow you to carry on, right? You probably would have to get a job or work or do something else, as well as graduate studies, if there isn't another offer coming from your potential supervisor for additional funds on the research side. But at a 3.5, we can start considering you for other kinds of awards, right? So there's all kinds of award structures here that fall in place. And what we do here is the GPAs are used to create a pool of applicants. This is something that happens at the program committee level. So if I've got a 3.5 or above, I can consider you for example, for a tuition award, which means you don't pay tuition. We'll give you an award for that, and tuition's paid. We'll consider you for it. Doesn't mean you'll get it. At a 3.7 and above, I can consider you for a Dean's Scholarship. Dean's Scholarship it's a relatively lucrative scholarship to be awarded. It really does take the heat off in terms of the financial element for students that are pursuing these advanced degrees. And all we're going to do is create a pool from that. I can tell you what happens at the program committee is once that pool is established, we remove the GPAs and we consider other elements of the application only. Right? So the GPA then doesn't really factor, which is an interesting process. We've decided over the years of maturing the process that that's fair. It's very difficult to tell the difference when I'm reviewing all the master's applicants that have come into the university. There are those programs that bring in extremely high GPAs. There are other programs that would see those high GPAs as being unattainable. Right? So then we make it fair, and we say everyone from 3.7 above is extremely good, whoever that person is. And we're going to decide based on letters of intent, CV, and other evidence, for example, your references, right? Who then gets awarded? Who's meritorious? And then we're going to allocate the funding that way. Okay, so this is why the 3 references are important. This is not a job application, so we don't want non-academic references. So if you use other people on your resume for getting a job around the City of Lethbridge, that's fine. I'm not particularly interested in what they have to say about your suitability to pursue advanced degrees academically, right? It's not their game. It's the same as the outside world's not always interested in what I have to say because I comment on your academic abilities. So for us, this means professors or instructors, someone that holds a tenure-track position at a university. So if you've got a sessional instructor that you really like, that's great. It'd be nice if they were a professor, assistant, associate, or full. It's somebody that is on the tenure track. Right? That's important. Tenured faculty is best. Because they've got they've got the experience to comment on the things we're looking for, right? And as a program committee, as well as within the department, so within the department there's one decision, at the program committee there's another decision, you're being evaluated, right? Over and over and over again. This is a serious thing for us to admit people into graduate school. We're looking for guidance on both your admissibility and for funding, right? So if we have a student that's got all sorts of good things going on, right? Excellent work all across the board. There's been some spectacular applications I've seen, and it really is the references that draw your attention to certain elements of those applicants and say, well, this is what I know about this person, and they are going to be a success for the following reasons. And all academics write these letters, so we're used to it. Okay, so it should include a professor, right? In fact, it's a must in the list that's familiar with your work. Right? So it can't just be, you wouldn't want to randomly ask somebody. I know you wouldn't, but we do put that in the list for a reason. Helpful to have comments that relate to your field of study. So if you've done an independent study with somebody, if you've worked for them in the summertime as a lab assistant, or you've got some other experience that you're able to show, that's really very, very helpful. The person that you're asking should be able to comment on more than just how you perform in their class. I'd like to see that. It's a pretty thin letter of reference that just says, the person succeeds in my class. You need a little bit more than that. Thank you. That's great. That's why the transcripts and other things should flow. As academics, we're used to sort of helping each other out, parsing these things to get as much information as we can. Provide the person who's going to serve as your reference with your transcripts. Don't wait for them to ask. I prefer that. It's my own personal preference. If I'm writing somebody a letter of reference, I like it if they just send me their unofficial transcripts. I then look at their transcripts. I can help the committee and comment on those aspects. Okay, also send them your CV, right, so they can paint a complete picture of you. Again, we're going to be talking essentially academic to academic, so we know what we're all looking for. All right. Next up, don't be afraid to ask. I find that students sometimes are quite shy when they're looking for references. Please don't let this hold up your application process. We're all willing to write references. We do this all the time. This is part of my job. Simply ask. Just ask that professor, even if they might be a little intimidating, or ask them anyways. They will be willing to do this, guaranteed, right? It's helpful if you give them some insight as to your motivation. Why do you want to take this next step? I love asking that question. Students will come by my office, or they'll send me an email, and they'll say, Craig, I'm interested in going to graduate school. Why? Why do you want to do that? Well, I've got the itch I can't scratch. I've been playing in this science stuff, and I really enjoy it, and I just want to carry on. Good answer, right? There you go. That's right. If they come up with something, that I'll ask them to work on that a little bit, right? If the answer that I get's not really what I'm looking for, I'll say, well, maybe we should delve a little bit more deeply into what a master's degree or a PhD program means. So again, try to give them some insight into your motivation. If they know you well enough, they've had you in a few classes, you're active in the club that's affiliated with the department, like for us in geography, that's usually a big deal. Then I'm going to know who these people are. I'm going to know who my club exec is. I'm going to know who these students are. And they come up to me, oh, Craig, can you write me this letter of reference? Great. Why do you want to do this? They give me a really good answer. Excellent. Give me some other information, and I'll see how good a letter I can write, right, based on that. If someone says no, and I've done that lots, right, it's usually because they don't know you very well. They're not saying, no, I don't think you're suitable to go. Don't be discouraged. Just, if you've got a, 3.2 out of 4, and you desperately and passionately want to pursue an area, one professor saying no doesn't mean you're stopped. Go and ask another one, right? You'll find somebody. Oftentimes, honestly, it's because we don't have any remembrance of you. And that's okay. Make yourself known a little bit, right? Be the student who puts their hands up and asks questions. We like that. Okay, PhD students and postdocs do not hold the correct credentials to be in the 2 of 3 group. We've had this happen from time and time again, right? You've worked for somebody as a research assistant in the summertime, perhaps of your 3rd or 4th year, and you're sitting in the lab with a PhD student or a postdoc all summer, and you become good friends with them, and then you say, hey, will you write me a letter of reference? They can be 1 out of your 3. You can't have 2 of them in that group. Because oftentimes they're young learning academics as well. They don't always have the correct insight. They'll say all sorts of things that I think, well, I don't know if I would say that. At any rate, we're just saying that's not the group you're looking for. Ditto with family friends or somebody you worked for in the past. Like, we can't, just 2 of those people have to be professors, please. Okay, your curriculum vitae. Please include your academic background, relevant work experience. Question?
I'm just curious about your references. Can you also use people like other doctors or scientists, like say at the research station? Is that an acceptable?
Yeah, so the question, just for those that can't hear, is whether or not you can use people from the research station or other professionals, doctors, whatever, as your reference. Absolutely. Yeah. Those people who are at the research station oftentimes serve on graduate committees. They often have affiliations within the university. In fact, many of them are members of the School of Graduate Studies. So they are fully, yes, please, do.
Even if they're not a professor?
No, that's fine. They can be in your 2 of 3 list. They would, to my mind and to the mind of the program committee, they hold the correct credentials, which is they hold a professional position as a research scientist working in the field. All right, they can comment. Give me a professor too, please. Yeah, let's not just have it all based on folk over at the research station or something. Again, they can speak to certain qualities about your person, but they can't speak to everything. Right, so yeah, but it's an excellent choice actually. Yeah, especially if you've got extensive experience with them. It's a good one. Okay, so back to CVs. Include your academic background. So things you've been, degrees you hold, places you were, how that all worked out. Relevant work experience, so if you've had work experience, for example, you've been over at the research station here in Lethbridge, or you've had other related experience that counts, that's great. Awards and scholarships, because they don't show up on your transcript. We need to know about those. Those are very helpful. for us if you've had an undergraduate NCERC, if you've had any of these other undergraduate awards, and if you haven't got one yet and you're thinking about going to graduate school, please go and talk to the people at the university that have awards. Many awards go unclaimed. Be surprised. And you wander in and fill out the application form and get an award. Volunteer work. We've just had the volunteer drive here on campus. This is it's an excellent way to gain experience. Right? It also shows activity. I like it when people who are coming into a master's degree have a vibrancy. Right? They've gone out, they've done some other things. Any publications you've been involved with, right? That's important. Right? Especially for those trying to go from master's to PhD. These are going to be the things that, again, they're not going to matter for entry as long as you've got the GPA. It is going to matter for awards if you can show that you've got the ability to actually get work done, right, in a timely fashion. And other relevant information, put it all in. Okay? You may not have all of these items yet. Don't stress out if you haven't had a publication. In my own field, it would be very unusual for somebody in geography at a bachelor's level to have a publication. In neuroscience, it might not be. There's lots of opportunity for them to participate in that kind of research, where geographical research often takes several years of field work in order to get the data that would be, warrant a publication. So it's just every field's different, and we are sensitive to that, so we understand the differences. Okay, the letter of intent. This is the one that I like. I love the letter of intent. I read them with great care. They vary greatly in quality. They're quite interesting, very informative. So I like to think of this as being an extremely important part of the application. Remember, we're going to take your GPA off as we get it in. And I'm going to start reading things like that letter of intent. So you do want to have other people read this. It's just fine to also pass it by people. Not only your other students, people you might know that are currently in a master's or PhD program, professors and others, they can help you with this one a little bit. It's got to be you that's writing it, but we want to hear these things. So goals and objectives for seeking graduate education. I don't want to make this sound like it's, you're about to step off a cliff or something. But this is a seriously different kind of degree than you got as an undergrad. So we want to know what drives you. That's the fun part for me to read, is why are you passionate about whatever it is? It could be bugs or plants or the human brain or whatever. Why are you passionate about that? Just tell me. Just let it fly. Let it rip. I want to hear it. Right? What do you want to achieve? What's your ultimate objective? Don't be shy. You're entering a master's program and you're thinking about pursuing a PhD and you really want my job. Right? This is what you want to do. You'd love to be a professor at a university. You want to be a research scientist. Or tell me what are your dreams? Letter of intent. How can we help you get there? Is what we want to know. That's the prime objective. Okay, then submit the application. For heaven's sake, don't forget to do that. The rest is then taken care of for you, so the School of Graduate Studies will contact your references, and things happen sort of in the background and the ball gets rolling. Right? But at this point, there's some checks that you've gone through and you need to make sure, right? So check to see that everyone has their parts complete. So that does mean occasionally you have to hound people if they said they were going to serve as your reference. Send them a reminder email before today to say, did you get that done? You can check online to make sure it's been done. So that makes that process a little bit more transparent. Official transcripts and proof of degree are due at various points along the way. And this is the point where we start to need those. And then once the application is in and complete, so after today, then it'll take a little while for the staff at the School of Graduate Studies to assemble all of the relevant pieces and parts of the application. Now that it's online, it happens fairly quickly, and then that goes out to the hosting department. So whoever it is that you're applying to, so for me, it's going to go to the Department of Geography. So the Department of Geography has a committee. I may or may not be on it. Imagine you're coming in to work with me. I may or may not be on that committee. But that's then a committee of, in our department, 3 people who are going to read that application, and they're going to write an evaluation of it. That evaluation then gets passed on to the program committee. They're going to read it, read the application, and read the evaluation, and then they're going to make their decision. So this takes a while. Right? It's not like you apply and then instantly you get a return email saying, welcome aboard, we'll see you in the next semester. It's going to take a month or so to get through all these committees. Okay, so it goes through the department, and it goes on to the program committee for a recommendation to admit you into the program, as well as other things like funding and other decisions are going to get made at that point. Okay. Now, you're in. Okay, let's imagine. Everything's gone well to this point. What's next? All right, so next thing that comes is you get an offer letter. So you'll get a letter from the School of Graduate Studies. It'll outline the institutional funding piece will come to you there. So if you've been offered a graduate assistantship or any of these other awards that are granted upon entry, then you'll hear about it. You need to sign your offer letter and accept it. It's a contract, right? So it's binding. We're promising that this is what we're going to offer, and you're saying you accept that. So there's a list of instructions there. For heaven's sake, check your email. Make sure it doesn't get filtered. Make sure, if you're post-degree and you're no longer checking your ULETH account, let's check that ULETH account. Like, you should be on top of this process, right? Don't wait. Then register, please. So you're going to register. Now, once you're in the program, you must register for each semester. The biggest one that we find that students forget is summer. They all forget summer. Because when you're a student here as an undergraduate, you normally aren't registered in the summer unless you're taking summer classes. As a graduate student, you are in the program and registered for every semester that you're in the program until you graduate. Okay? You need to be registered at all times. Whether you're taking classes or not, we levy fees. That's the way that works. There's a residency requirement for both the MSc and PhD. They're different, but you can look up that detail as you go. Actually, I have that detail in the next slide. Then you're going to have course requirements. That might not be decided as you enter. Right? So when you're doing the application, the potential supervisor might identify courses you have to take. Some departments, like biological sciences, they have a required course. You have to take it. Right? It's a course that is, here is what biological sciences are. And you do a whole bunch of readings with your entire cohort, and you all get together and write papers and do things. Many departments have this course. It's required. You have to take it. You need to put that on in your course, in the courses that you're going to take. Get that course listed. Your supervisor might then say, oh, and you need to take this 5,000 level course over here if it's a master's program. That goes on. So it's between 2 and 6 courses for a master's degree. It needs to be minimum 2. Right? So that's your course requirement. Get those things in at that point. They then become part of your program of study. So then we check to make sure that you've done those things along the way as a milestone. Make sure your courses have been complete. Okay, then the degree requirement. So the courses that you have, we've just discussed those, so I won't go over those in any more detail. There's then a thesis proposal. If you're a full-time student, there is both full-time and part-time master's degrees. There's not a part-time option at this point for a PhD. But full-time, it's the end of the second term. So if you entered, imagine you entered in September, right? Your thesis proposal is not due until the end of the spring term. Right? And then you need to have that in and approved. There's a form, you need to fill it out, right? Your supervisors, right? We're professors, we may or may not be on top of the production of forms. Students, you know that it has a form, get it in. For a master's degree, 5 pages, please. That's all I want for your thesis proposal. I've received, the longest one I think I ever read was 68 pages. It was somewhat beyond the limit required and I sent it back. And I went, can you give me the 5, as a program chair, I have to read these. And this one was not in a subject area that I find tremendously interesting or even vaguely related to what I do. So 68 pages of plowing through. Oh, this is wonderfully boring. Don't do that. The rule is 5. All right? That's with figures and everything in. An NSERC application for funding, you can talk to your supervisor about this, 1 page. Okay? It's a tight page. 5 pages you'll find is hard when you want to write a whole law. Look at the wonderful things I'm going to do. How could you possibly limit me to 5 pages? Because it's difficult, and that's why we do it. Get it tight. Anyways, part-time, you get an extra. Obviously, we double the time limit for you to figure out what you're doing. Courses are done. Thesis proposal's done. Then you have a thesis. Ta-da. That's the whole deal. There's a residency requirement of 12 months of continuous enrollment. So you have to be here for a year. You can finish it in a year, but Never heard of anybody doing such a thing. It's possible, right? That's fine. The time limit for part-time, time limit for the Master of Science program is 24 months. It's 48 months for part-time, so we double the time limit. If you go past 24 months, it is possible to extend programs. We just ask that you don't use those extensions to do things like, complete the work. This is a degree that happens very, very rapidly. I can tell you that just from both my own personal experience and from having done this for a long, long time. This is not something that happens if you're relaxed. Like, you're in and you're on. I start counting to the end of 24 months for every one of my master's students the first month they enter the program. Right? There's been many of them that I've sat down in the first week and I've said, well, here's your timeline, and they get a little panicky. Don't get panicky. You just need to complete. And completing means you're going to work hard. Just go all the time. But you love what you're doing. That's why you applied. And we've checked all the other boxes along the way, so you can do it. You just need to focus in on it and make sure it gets done in 24 months. Right? And if you start counting backwards, when you produce a thesis, you have to defend that. Don't try to defend all the time at the end of the semester. You've been a student long enough to know what happens to us at the end of semesters. All our undergraduate courses come due, all our marking comes due, everything is due at the end of semester. And then you say, I want to defend at the end of the semester. Now, if you do want to defend at the end of semester, you need to count 5 weeks back from that defense date. You count 5 weeks back, that's when it has to go into the School of Graduate Studies as a completed thesis, which means it's been through your committee several times before that iteration. Right? You have to iterate the thing to make sure it's nice and clean. That's the defense copy. Right? And that also presumes that you're going to walk out the door then. Like, there's lots of things that you have to think about. You go, okay, 5 weeks before that. If you're going to iterate that a few times, then you have to go probably a month or two back beyond that. So that's probably like a full semester that it's going to take just to finish this degree off. And then you start counting backwards and counting backwards and counting backwards. And then the first day you walk in the door, you're going to get the subtle sense that you might be a bit behind already. That's a good one. You need to then use that as motivation to charge forward. Okay, other things that you can do while you're here. Right? Recently, we've added a cooperative education option for the Master of Science program. I would ask that you consult with your supervisor on whether or not this is appropriate if you're interested in doing cooperative education. I've had many students that have gone through this. It does extend your degree time period, generally speaking. We understand that. Sometimes it doesn't. Depends on how that's managed. It's the same as an undergraduate co-op, except for you have to do 2, I believe. It's an excellent opportunity to gain experience. So the co-op office is set up for this. Your supervisors, again, depends on your field of study. They might be really supportive, and they might not. Depends on how this works. We also offer a number of professional development programs within the Thrive program here at the U of L. So we're like we're leading the way in Alberta in getting this done. This is professional development for you. These are the things that make a difference at the end of the day. So it's things like project management and writing your thesis and how do you get all of these other things aligned. I've done the thesis writing workshop from time to time. And you sit down with students and I start with the title page, like what has to be there? Why? I rarely see a title page that doesn't have errors in it. You're like, wow, super smart students and they can't follow the guideline for writing a title page. And like, don't ever let those details trip you up in a program. And that's what the Thrive program is about. So there's all kinds of other bits and pieces. I can't hope to cover it all. Look it up online. It's an innovative program that we run here at U of L. It's a good thing to ensure that you're getting done on time. That's the objective. Funding. Okay, so you've all had labs. Those labs normally have somebody who's got a graduate assistantship. That's how they're funding parts of their graduate program. This is normal. You can expect to teach labs. We all have done it. I did it for years and years, and I still enjoy teaching labs. I think labs are more fun than teaching classes in some ways because they're a little bit more entertaining. So there's that part. You can do lab instruction in there, and there's other things that you can be assigned to do as part of any graduate assistantship. You need to have a look at what the rules and regulations are. That's held with the Graduate Student Association, GSA. You go and look up their guidelines for that, and you can have a peek. A research assistantship is different. A research assistantship may or may not relate to your field of study. Oftentimes, I might have funding related to a certain project, and I have a student. The student wants to work on X. I have exactly this scenario playing out right now, where I have a student who his thesis is based on doing some extremely large-scale mapping studies, and I've got funding that is for other projects, for other things. Right? And consequently, he doesn't have an RA, because he doesn't want to do those other things. That's not interesting to him. He wants to work on this. Well, I don't really have funding for that. So we're funding him otherwise. Right? There's other sources of funding that we're putting towards his particular effort. So you may or may not have that. During my PhD, I was funded by 3 different projects, none of them related at all to the research work I was doing. That's a research assistantship. Right? There are rules that govern those. Please avail yourself of the rules. Right? It's extremely important. That's where the Graduate Student Association plays a central role. They govern, it's a contract that's between us and them, the university and them, on number of hours and payment per hour and all the rest of the fun stuff that goes along with it. That being said, the majority of students that are coming to us in a master's program or a PhD are in funded positions. Okay, so they're making money. It's not a job. It's still education. So the pay is, generally speaking, terrible. But it's not bad for a student. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not trying to say, like, we actually do a really good job of funding the majority of our students here. You know, there's money available, but you need to work for it, right? There's $7,000 for these ones. These ones can vary, right? It all depends on what we're able to put and dangle in front of you. No student ever comes in here thinking, well, this is a career. I'm going to be a full-time master's student for the rest of my life. There's a 24-month time limit. That's all you've got. It's not meant to be that kind of program. Okay, so there's some differences within the PhD program. Similar process for admission, so I'm not going to go over that. At any rate, all 3 references have to be academic in this case, so we really do want to hear about your academic excellence if you're going to broach the PhD. Even if you're taking a master's degree and that your letter of intent, you're writing it and you're thinking, yeah, I really do want to go on. Start thinking about that now, because within that 24-month period, there's an application process that's going to have to roll through if you want to kick it right into the PhD, right? All right, so none of this all rolls. It just goes like a virtual snowball. Right? They will need to comment on your suitability for graduate work. It gets harder as we go along. A master's degree involves mastery. A PhD involves the creation of new knowledge. So if the first one's hard, the next one's diamond. Right? Creation of new knowledge is not trivial. Right? That's a pretty high standard for anyone. Right? Now, if you're up to the challenge, we're going to know that. And we'll write that in a letter. That's fine. Degree requirements change, 0 to 6 courses. Right? That's a reflection of what this university is all about in terms of research intensive and comprehensive. Sometimes PhD students, I don't want them taking courses at all. Why do I want you taking a course? This is a research degree. Do you need to know something? Learn it. Right? You've got master's degree, you've got the ability to learn. Get on that. Right? Or if you don't have the correct background, I would really resist having one of my students take 6 courses at a PhD level, but they might need that. Then we would put them into that. A thesis proposal, again, is due within 1 year of registration in the program. Again, it's not the 2-semester thing that it was for the master's. We're going to give you a full year. It's a little bit more extensive because at this point you're proposing how you're going to push back the frontiers of science. That's a tough one. We also require that you complete a comprehensive examination due within the first 2 years of a program. Now, there are a variety of different flavors, shall we say, of comprehensive examinations from department to department, but they all generally have the same structure that's governed within the School of Graduate Studies. The comprehensive examination is meant to display exactly what it says, that you have comprehensive knowledge within your research field. All right, so it's not that somebody in geography has to necessarily have all of geography mastered, but certainly within their own area, yeah. We're going to ask you questions that have to do with everything. So it's a fairly difficult examination, and it does govern whether or not you move forward, right, in the process. Then you produce a thesis and defend said thesis. The residency requirement is 24 months at a minimum and a maximum of 48 at that point. Okay, so with that, I have 5 minutes left or thereabouts for questions. So I timed that reasonably well. I expect I have a few, I hope. Questions?
So if we're applying and we don't need to, like, is the funding just strictly 3.0, 3.5, 3.7? Are there other awards available? Is that, like, are all the other awards external?
Okay, so the question has to do with awards and the GPA. I'm just going to see if I can correctly characterize this for our people in television land. So 3.0, 3.5, and 3.7. Those are our three thresholds for institutional funds. Other funds have other funds are simply admission to the graduate program plus something. Like my wife actually deals with that at the School of Graduate Studies, so you'll have to ask her. I'm the wrong person. But yeah, for those institutional funds, and again, the 3.0 would get you consideration for, essentially admission into the program gets you considered for a graduate assistantship. We offer that essentially to everyone, almost always. Sometimes students don't want them. Okay, that's also okay. So you might get into your program and say, well, no, I've got funding from other sources, my supervisor, I don't need a graduate assistantship, or there's no, so it's possible, right? That would be written. Most of the time, your students do need it, so we offer those for pretty much all students. The other ones, again, are thresholds to get you into a pool. Right? So 3.5 gets you into a pool, 3.7 gets you into a pool, and we decide on there. All other awards at the university are going to have various structures. Some of them are purely GPA based. Right? So you come in and they just sift the pile. Right? Those at the top of the pile, my wife will kill me if I get this wrong. Those at the top of the pile will receive the funding. Right? Those, and that's what gets decided upon. That's the way it goes. Some of them are domain specific. Right? So you might have a person who's donated money to the university specifically to support students. It could be for single mothers returning to graduate school. And then there's and we have funding that's available. It's been earmarked by a donor to perhaps help assist a student. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Good. Any other questions? Sure. You can contact Greta and she can just email it to you. That's fine. All the details are also available online. So if you go in and look through, there's two important documents. The calendar is essential. That's the governing document for the whole university. So go to the university's website, you're going to read into the calendar and you're going to read the graduate studies calendar. It's going to then outline these. And then for the program you're interested in, go and consult the policies and guidelines document. The policies and guidelines document it's like a pathway. It'll tell you how to manage this workflow. So once you're in the program, it's going to tell you how this works. It's going to give you what the formatting is for that title page. That's in that. That's not in the calendar. That's over here in this policies and procedures document. So do consult that. Use that as your once you're in the program, adhere to that. That's very important. Other questions? I don't think I repeated that question. Is that it? Okay, and we're done. Thanks for coming. Tell your friends, right?